Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. Okay, come down here in the morning, did a little bit of more fiddling last night, and used, before this set completely, I used my old ink knife, favorite ink knife. First I banged on the board and that separated it. This is the waste mold, obviously, for this line fold project. Then I use my knife to start it. Got a couple pieces of scrap boxwood and some 30-pound test braided fishing line, and I went around and separated the whole thing. And now it's all loose, should be ready to pick up. And I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to set this up to try to get some video of me picking it up. I'm alone today. And we'll flip this over and see if we can evacuate it, see how it looks, and try to cast it. So hang in there. All right. See where I was able to cut the clay right off. We got a really nice waste mold here. Check that out. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get out my tools. I mixed it a little wet. Looks like I don't have any significant flaws. Don't have any breakage along the edge where there was a slight amount of draft. So I'm going to have to go through and dig this out and just remove all of this tool. Now, you could just yank it out, but if you have little edges, like see that edge just came off. So I'm going to try to dig it out carefully and make sure that I don't stress anything, because it's not ideal to have it soft, but there's a balancing act, because the harder this is, the more difficult it is to carve away. And if it's fragile, and I cast it with a well-proportioned mix of, whether it's plaster or hydrostone, whatever, hydrocal, it will make a lot easier mold to relieve, to take this waste mold away. So I'm gonna have to be very careful digging this off. So I'll spend some time doing that. This clay will go back in the bucket, we'll wedge it up, use it for the next project. But this was shaping up to be a very good waste mold. Okay, as I'm working this, I went ahead and work on keeping your tools clean, scraped all the plaster off. Obviously there's no armature at all. This is where the line fold, you can see the witness here, where the clay actually was on the bat. I only used clay on this one. If I had built this up with any blocking, with pieces of 2x or scrap lumber or any kind of armature in there, I couldn't have taken it off like I did. So that's why I made the point of talking about the different structures that we use here in studio, like this iris. All of this structure, everything that's connected, is attached from the back by screws. And so in order to take that apart, if I had done a waste mold or did a waste mold on this, I'd take all these screws out. I would take this back off, the actual flat piece of plywood, I'd take all of this off, and then I would have to deconstruct it from the back. So it's a little more complicated. You have to think ahead. This isn't just a last minute decision and you think one day I'll do it this way and the next day I'll do it the other. If you haven't constructed it the right way, it may not be possible. So we'll go over here and get to work. Got an old 5-in-1 painter's tool that I use. I like an awful lot. And to get things started, it's a real nice tool to have, a general tool to begin evacuating this. And what I'll do is, this is going to end up being a lot like carving the waste mold away, except I'm doing the clay part. I dig it all out. I use my different clay tools to evacuate it, try to keep as much plaster out of the clay as I can so I don't have to clean it as much. And something that does help you a lot, and this is one of the things that one of the reasons I started doing models for everything, especially if you're doing a finished model, working model in plaster. This rehearses the form in your mind. And so the more you rehearse the form and approach the form from both sides, because obviously now I'm going to the finished surface, and so I'll understand differences about the depth or the volume that I need. Coming from the other side, I'll know how to approach it when I carve it out of stone, because I'm carving away a waste mold. And also really like the benefit of changing the value or the perceived color on the project, because doing it in clay, it's one color, doing it in plaster is another color, and doing it in stone is still another color. And so you get to see the project, the composition, in multiple states that you wouldn't otherwise see it, and you'll understand how light plays on it, whether it's a matte finish like the plaster, whether it's sort of a solid finish like the clay that may even have some sheen to it if it's warm in the sunlight, to the tooled surface of the stone, which is completely different than either one of these surfaces. And so you'll have a much deeper understanding of what you're doing. So, but time to just sit down and dig some clay. So hang in there, we'll get this cleaned out. Okay, I can't emphasize enough times or how important it is. This is loose, okay? I could probably pull this out in a great big piece. I'll probably lose edge detail if I do. I'm a lot smarter. Little pieces are little mistakes. I say it in stone, I say it in plaster. It's smarter to take a small piece at a time out. You may have a little bit of plaster that comes out, but you'll retain the vast majority of your detail. So don't get greedy. Think you can go just ripping this out in one big piece. You probably can. You're probably going to ruin your mold, and your model's ruined as well. So this is you have to have some patience doing this, because there's going to be lots of keys in there and lots of things holding the clay in place. And so you want to work in a way that it comes out without fouling or damaging any of those pieces. And then you'll end up with a lot better mold. You see that key's way under there. So just go slow, it'll come, just be patient. We released it, nothing's really sticking, and it's hard enough, but it's soft enough that this ought to make a really nice mold. So just be patient. You see, because I pushed a little hard right here, got a little chip. So that's not ideal. It's not a big deal, because that's way underneath. That's what I'm talking about. Using a wider tool, you tend to not dig as quickly as you will doing a smaller tool. Up here where it was shallow, it's not a big deal. Just working slow, but taking a long diagonal to relieve the clay, and then you can kind of just pry it right off. And if you're careful, you won't pull any plaster with it. You may have some shed. You see there's loose plaster in there, but that's not a big deal. Okay, a little further along here, I'm starting to get into some deep clay and more intricate detail. Up here it was pretty straight. There weren't a whole lot of keys and things to hang up. Down here where it's complicated, a lot of things can lock and you can lose edges. So I've gone ahead and I've taken a lot off the top in general and thinned the clay so it's very flexible. And that means I can just kind of work it up and get small pieces off where it moves easy. And I can cut it with the tool if I need to. And that'll help me get pieces out that might have been keyed in there otherwise and been very difficult to remove without damaging the mold, because right now we really want to protect this mold. This is another reason for keeping your clay clean. People get lazy. They think clay is disposable. If you got lots of money, I guess it is. But if you have bits of debris, chunks of old plaster and rubber in your clay that you don't really get uptight about cleaning out as you're using it, when you're trying to cut, you may hit something, think you're there, and then end up having too much clay to pull out, and you'll damage your mold. So keep your clay clean. If you wedge this up really well, this clay is really smooth. This clay, a lot of it was actually salvaged because it was filthy dirty, and it had all kinds of debris in it, from everything from just junk on the floor to mold materials to plaster, you name it. And I went through and cleaned it all out, and it's fantastic. So we'll just keep working, but little pieces are little mistakes. Thin this down. Don't try to take a piece of clay an inch thick and yank it out, because you'll rip off all of your detail. So keep working. Okay, got this all cleaned out. You can see I've got a little bit of shed. You'll have some roughness, and this is release agent related if you have too much foamy stuff on there. It's fairly typical, because you're going to try to make sure it releases. You don't want it to stick. You don't have to put it on the clay, but it works better if you do. You can be real careful about it. This is a quick demo. Not making any money doing this, so I just want it done. So I'm gonna clean this up, go over it with a very soft brush, probably some compressed air to blow all this shag out. I'm gonna build a frame, just put some 2x4 lumber, whatever, together to go around the edge here, just to dam it, so I can cast it maybe about an inch in the back, and then I may even scribe it just a little bit to look more like a cross. I don't know. But we'll get that done, mix up some plaster, charge this, then let it set and let that go off really well. And then I'll start chiseling it out. This clay will be all wedged back into blocks to be put back in the bucket, and we'll keep going. Okay, I'll do this a quick overview before I start running plaster. Just basic setup. In the kitchen, we call this mise en place, to have everything in order before you start. The frame, casting frame form is in place. I've used a pair of wedges to approximately level this. It's not critical that it's perfectly level with an actual carpenter's level, because you may not have every piece level. These may not be exactly true. Just get it close to level. I've cleaned up all my tools. I don't have clay tools laying around to get tripped, fall, to get lost, to get accidentally put into the plaster somehow, or swept up in the trash when there's plaster all over the ground. I've also moved the bat with the form so that these legs aren't sticking out. I could reverse it. It isn't. I'm not worried about that as much. But if these were sticking out here where I'm traveling, and I hit one and I move it during the process, that's bad. You can have a big failure. So I don't want that there. I've got my second table set up here that's divorced. It's completely separated from this one. So if for some reason there's a problem with this table, with a bucket of water, plaster, whatever, and it spills, it's not going to spill on here. Same thing there. I also have my wet over here on this table. I have my good plaster over here, completely separate. The water's not going to splash. If you set your bag of plaster right here by your bucket of water and something happens and you spill it, it's not cool, man. So make sure to set your workspace up good. I've got my bucket for my trash. rake the floor. I know where everything is before I get started, because once we start running plaster, you can't stop. It's got to get done. And so if things are out of your way and picked up, you should have a lot better result. So time to mix some plaster. I've got water ready. I've got the hose ready. I've got extra water ready. Plaster already mixed out. And probably run 2 batches to fill this up. Don't need it to be real thick. We'll see how 1 batch goes, if there's quite enough there. And then it'll be time to let it cure. We'll carve it off.